Today on Locked On Red Wings, Amadeus Lombardi and Nate Danielson shine as Detroit splits the doubleheader in Dallas during the prospect games.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we're available wherever you get your podcasts. Scotty, we got a fun episode for the people because we have actual hockey to talk about.
We
for the
are
first time.
So back.
No. We are kind of back. That's the level we're at.
I forget we implemented a tier system in a schedule.
I did.
Right, a schedule.
I forced it upon you.
We're back rating for each day of the calendar. Yes,
we're kind of back. But we have actual hockey to talk about as the prospect games happened over the weekend here in Dallas. We are recording this right after the conclusion of Game 2, in which Detroit dropped, but they picked up the win in Game 1. Segment 1 here, we'll talk about who stood out to us the most, who are the difference makers in this tournament. And I think there's two very obvious names. I kind of spoiled it in the cold open. Segment 2, we'll just talk more briefly about other players who maybe left an impression upon us. And then segment 3, we'll clean up anything else that we got left. Or as in Locked On Tigers, you affectionately call it stuff. So
it was supposed to be like a one episode thing. I was like, I have this new segment. I'm just going to call it stuff. And then comment your ideas of what it should be called. And 100% of the comments were, you should definitely just call it stuff. Forever. And I was like, all right, well, there we go. Made that easy, I guess. But yeah.
When you're a podcaster, sometimes you got to listen to the will of the people because the people are who help pay the bills.
Man of the people.
So, Scotty, I think we should probably lead off with the news that happened just before puck dropped in Game 1. That is obviously Carter Bear and Jacob Richlovsky did not play in the tournament, and Amadeus Lombardi subbed in. Richlovsky was day-to-day. Carter Bear was out for the weekend and was but they said he's going to be good to go for training camp, more precautionary than anything. It's a bummer that he didn't play, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm just more disappointed we didn't get to see him.
Yeah. And he had dealt with injury stuff over the last calendar year anyway. I don't really whatever. That's totally fine. I think the bigger, I don't know if I want to use the word surprise, but I think the bigger news with that is the fact that Lombardi got subbed in and immediately just dominated. It was he just completely, they're like, oh yeah, we'll send Lombardi to this thing and he can play, and he just skated circles around everybody, certainly in Game 1. So yeah.
That, I think, is the perfect place to kind of go into, because Lombardi, like you said, was the player who got subbed in for these games. Just full disclosure, I only saw the third period in Game 2, so I'll rely more on what you saw in Game 2 than what I saw. But I saw Game 1.
At your own will, but...
And from what I've heard, from what you've said and what others have said in Game 2, it feels like Nate Danielson and Amadeus Lombardi did not belong. And I mean that positively. They did exactly kind of what we were expecting in the fact that they've kind of outgrown these types of prospect events and in different ways, but they just quietly dominated the entire weekend. Lombardi had a goal in the first game. And then he had so many grade A opportunities. He had, I think, at least 2 assists in Game 2. Nate Danielson had a couple assists in Game 1 and then scored in Game 2 himself. They just, whenever they were on the ice, the Red Wings took over. And it's really exciting to see, but also that is what you kind of need to see out of those guys at this point. And more so for Danielson. Lombardi, it's a nice surprise how well he's developed as, a 4th-round pick. But with Danielson, you need to see that from him more than anything.
Yeah, and I think that it is, if there was anything you were hoping to get out of the weekend, if there was anything you were hoping to get out of these 2 games, it probably was reassurance that at least Danielson was too good for these games, right? Like we talked about the decision to play him in these games last week when the rosters were announced, or 2 weeks ago, whatever. And we had said, like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. We just hope that he looks like one of the best players on the ice, because he probably should. And boy, did he. Yeah, he looked like one of, if not the best player on either team the entire weekend.
Like, it's funny too, because I feel like they dominated in exactly the ways that you would expect them to as players. Lombardi was incredibly flashy. Whenever he had the puck, he was making things happen. He was dancing around the opponents in the offensive zone. He had actually a couple nice defensive plays too, but like the flash is what you expect out of Lombardi. Like, this is a kid who scored 45 goals with the Flint Firebirds a couple years ago, 102 points, and then last season he had 40 points in 44 games after coming back from injury. Like, that was what we expected, and that is what he gave us. Like, this is a kid who very clearly proved, like, okay, I don't need to be here anymore. And he wasn't going to be. He got invited by the Red Wings to fill in for Carter Bear, and I'm glad that he did, because he kind of got to establish, like, hey, I am a professional hockey player. I am at very minimum, I am a Grand Rapids Griffin, and that it's a little bit too high of a bar for me to be here, too low of a bar for me to be here at this point. Nate Danielson, well, he definitely showed up on the score sheet, right? I think 2 assists in the first game. He scored in the second game. He, from what I witnessed, was that two-way player that we have been
big time
promised over the last couple years since he was drafted. He kind of controlled the play off the puck in ways. You know what I mean? Like, back check, forecheck, winning possessions, getting the puck to his teammates, obviously producing as well, but it was a lot more about controlling the play off the puck as much as it was with the puck.
Yeah, there's a great quote from Pistons legend Isaiah Thomas. And I know that this is cross-pollinating basketball and hockey, but I think it applies to how I felt watching this game, where Isaiah Thomas says, when he's talking about being the point guard, right, and having the offense run through him, even when he has the ball, doesn't have the ball, and he says, my movements determine the movements of the 9 other players on the court. And that's how I felt watching Danielson. It was just like everything he did, whether he had the puck or didn't have the puck, whether the team was in the offensive zone or the defensive zone, whether really in every situation, it felt like everything revolved around him, and it should have. He was clearly the best player on the ice, I think. And so that is what you want out of that quote unquote, again, two-way player, right? You want somebody who can not only control the game with the puck on his stick, but also control the game when the other team has possession of the puck, right? It's not even just off puck for himself, but also when the Red Wings don't even have possession. You want him to still affect the game. And I think that you saw in spades, really, that he is able to do that. Now, I'm not trying to oversell either. It's a prospects game, and a lot of the guys on Dallas too are guys that will, never have even established NHL careers. Like, we have to understand the level of competition, but I think it's safe to say that he has outgrown this level of competition, and he deserves to be playing with some more, closer to NHL, or if not NHL talent.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like this Dallas team had Emil Hemming and really not a whole heck of a lot else as terms as prospects go. Like, the Red Wings are stacked up and down the lineup, and it's actually, I wouldn't say it's frustrating they blew the second game because it's a prospects game. I really didn't care. But I was just like, you probably should have won, but it's whatever. Scotty, let's go to a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about the other, obviously, big name prospects that we got to get to. They're doing our first post-game recap of the year. We got to get back into the swing of things. This is preseason for us, too. So stay tuned. Segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings coming up. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. You just got to use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. we've all been in spots where we need a job, or maybe you're on hire and you need to hire fast. I know I've been on both sides of that coin, and because of Indeed, it's helped me get those jobs, whether it be through hiring at LCA coming out of COVID and we needed to fill 6 stores worth of employees because there's the main shop and then there's all the outlet stores. Indeed helped me hire. When I was unemployed last year after being unfortunately laid off from Odyssey, Indeed helped me get a new job. So check out Indeed. You can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need.
Indeed it is.
It just doesn't roll off the tongue the same way.
I don't care.
All right, Scotty, who do you want to talk about here to lead off? Obviously, we got a whole plethora of prospects, a couple first rounders to talk about too. Who stood out to you?
Yeah, so I want to talk about ASP really. I think that it was an interesting weekend where you saw the ceiling and you saw the excitement around what he could be, and you saw flashes of like, wow, that, you know, when it is going well, it is going really well. And then you also saw when it's not going well, it's not going very well. You saw the reason why he is not a guy that is in consideration for the opening night roster in Detroit, and why there is still, you know, a lot of development that needs to be had still, which is fine. He's still young. That's where we expected him to be. That's not like a surprise or a bad thing. It's just watching these games, you saw both. You saw the good that comes with him and what he could be, and you also saw kind of the struggles that he still has to iron out as well.
Yeah, he had a power play goal in the first game. It was a nice shot through a screen. But like you said, we saw, I think where he really thrives is along the blue line in the offensive zone. He's really good at skating kind of laterally and cycling to find open space. So I think he has a real threat as an offensive producer, especially on the power play in him. But, and you alluded to it just there, we saw a lot of the flaws defensively too, especially I think in game 2. I don't think he had a good game 2. A lot of defensive turnovers, defensive lapses in the third period, and I know Danielson kind of put him in a bad spot, but he tried to stick handle his way out of trouble in the neutral zone and turned the puck over, almost resulting in a goal. Prior to a goal, he had a turnover too. It didn't directly result in the goal that was scored, but there was a lot of those defensive woes, and I believe on one of the goals, he tried to went down to block the shot, and they just went around him. There were several moments defensively where I was like, okay, yes, this kind of reaffirms how I felt after watching him in Grand Rapids, that there's a lot of upside there, but he has to learn how to play defense on North American ice. Not engaging physically in board battles, for example. Engaging in the board battles, but really just using your stick, not really using your body to pin him up against the boards. And he's a little undersized. Not undersized. He's like 5'10". He's not tiny. But he has to put on some weight. He has to learn how to play with a little bit more physicality. Not that he has to go out there and be Ben Sherratt with his body, but you know, you have to learn to play a North American style to survive. And I think that a year in Grand Rapids is probably going to serve him well. And I think that we'll see him earliest next season. But I could be proven wrong, right? I'm judging this off 2 prospect games. We got training camp, we got preseason. He might, you know, find a groove at one of those points and run away with it. But what I saw in those 2 games from ASP, even with the flashes, which I thought were brilliant, and I think that there's a huge offensive ceiling there for him as a power play puck carrier. I just think that there's still defensive needs that have to be developed before I'm ready to thrust him onto the Red Wings back end, with however thin it is right now.
For sure. And I think that is, yeah, like that's really just my biggest takeaway of the weekend is I'm incredibly excited after what we saw in these 2 games, right? I'm incredibly excited about the ceiling that he could reach, while also understanding that there is still, you know, a year probably at a minimum, if not a little bit longer, in terms of development that is needed for him until he's an NHL caliber player. So, yeah, obviously we'll keep tabs on him throughout the year. We'll see him in camp too. Like, you know, he'll be around and he'll be in the mix. But definitely, you know, is going to be in Grand Rapids and should be in Grand Rapids.
Correct. MBN, I think might as well just wrap up the
Yeah.
first round picks that were at the tournament. I thought he was productive. I thought he laid a big hit in game one, an open ice hit. He also scored a power play goal and a nice feed from Doucette. That's another thing too. Anecdotally, these prospect games helped me a lot. Learning how to pronounce player names.
Sure.
It's Doucette, it's Guimond. Like, I'm like, okay, now I've heard it. So, yeah, I mean, he is a player that, this is how I've always felt, is I think his game is going to translate a lot easier to North American ice. He plays a heavy style. That's what you drafted him as a power forward, and I think the smaller ice will actually benefit him in that regard.
Sure.
You saw him level a big hit. He's got a big shot. It was a nice, I believe, a one-timer backdoor on the power play, if I'm recalling correctly. Sorry, they blend together a little bit if I'm misremembering, but what I saw from him was a guy who, again, I don't expect to see him this year. If we do, it'd be like a cup of coffee at the end of the season.
Yeah.
But I think what I saw from him is going to be a lot more easily translatable to the NHL just because of the style of game that he brings.
Yeah, I'm interested with. I thought he looked great for starters. I really was incredibly impressed. He's a guy that you have to intentionally watch him off the puck to really understand the I guess full value that he can bring a team, right? Like, he's a guy that maybe didn't fill up. I mean, he did score in game two, but isn't a guy that's gonna necessarily fill up the stat sheet as much as just be a really, really solid, again, kind of two-way forward like that. So I was really impressed with him. I thought he played a very mature brand of hockey. I think that with him, I mean, you mentioned kind of going forward. The question that I have is, what is the ceiling for this profile, right? Is this a guy that at best is a middle six forward that is going to be like half a point a game and play decent defense? Or is this a guy that is it, well, either higher or lower than that, right? Is this a bottom six guy that's going to be a grinder, a third line guy that's going to be productive in a lot of different areas? Jack of all trades, master of none type of thing? Or is there some offensive upside that they can really tap into and kind of make him a solidified, top end, can produce points at a decent clip and play good defense? So I was really impressed. Like I said, I thought he looked really, really mature on the ice. And
mature is a good word.
Sorry?
I said mature is a good word.
Yeah, I thought he really looked just like confident and in control. I thought he looked really solid.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when you talk about ceiling, I think most likely it'll be middle six, left wing 2. But I could definitely see a situation. I mean, look at your depth chart right now. He's your best option for left wing 1 long term, him or Carter Bear. Carter Bear just, 1 year behind where MBN is at this moment. So, there's a real opportunity for MBN, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he can play both sides, if I recall correctly, but with obviously Lucas Raymond up there on right wing 1, you'll likely put MBN on left wing 1. But, yeah, I think more than likely he'll be like left wing 2 at a peak, but on the Red Wings he might be. There's the opportunity there for left wing 1. He could definitely develop into that. Not saying he won't. Scotty, I want to talk about Shai Buyam as well. Shai Buyam, I thought, was pretty steady this entire. He wasn't like. I think he was your best defenseman, like in all around game. He just doesn't have the necessarily like the flashiness, and I think maybe part of it is because we're biased towards ASP as a fan base. Like, he is your first round pick. People forget, like, there was a lot of hype around Buyam for a little bit too. He was on that stacked Denver teams. He came over from Grand Rapids, kind of had a little bit of a quiet season last year, but he's a really solid defenseman, played on the top pair with the Griffins last year after Edvinsson graduated, and he had 2 really nice goals in this prospect games. The first one yesterday, off the faceoff, the play was moving to the right off the faceoff. He curled down low left, bar down, and then today was a beautiful tic-tac-toe pass, one of Ammo's assists in this tournament. He assists to the board, Bantle behind the back to Buyam, who was breaking weak side. He finished. Buyam showed flashes of offense, obviously, as we were just talking about, but defensively too. I mean, this is a guy who plays a really solid two-way game, and this is another player that I think has an NHL ceiling. I think it's just going to be more in a depth role.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think that depth role on the blue line also has a lot of different meanings.
There's
You
a
know
lot
what I
of
mean?
depth on this blue line right now, but it's not great depth.
Well, yeah, I guess that's my point. But like, depth could be is bottom four depth, is just bottom pair depth, right? Like there's a lot more opportunity, and you're going to be on the ice a lot more either way. So, yeah, I really liked what I saw. Obviously, he had a great weekend statistically, but I think that there's a lot to like there for sure. He's a guy that absolutely, in a year's time, we could be talking about him in a similar vein to how we talked about Aljo last year, right? Where it was like, is this a guy that could crack the roster and be, a solid third pair guy? Or I don't know. You're going to have hopefully a decent amount of contracts come off the books that won't be re-signed on the blue line next offseason as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him to make his mark over the next 12 months for sure.
Yes. Let's head to a quick break, Scotty. When we come back, stuff. That was for you. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff and a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, if I can speak, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Scotty, we are at the part of the show where we kind of just briefly clean up some other player names that we want to talk about. Is there anyone that you want to talk about off rip here?
I mean, we definitely talked about some of the big names. I do think it's worth bringing up Finney, man. I mean, he had a really solid weekend as well in terms of the box score and kind of the stats. But I think that he showcased in the eye test too that he belonged certainly on the ice among his peers in this setting. But I'm really excited for him this upcoming year. I feel like when we talked about him with Andrew as well, like he's a guy that gained a lot of steam over the last 12 months. And then you have a performance like this in these two games. I'm really excited for what he's going to do over the next 12 months as well to kind of, I don't know, carry that momentum, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he came out of the gates on fire in game one. He scored, 30 seconds into the game. He made a power move past the defenseman on the outside, cut to the inside, and banked it home between the pads. It was a great goal. And then shortly thereafter, he made another move and had a scoring attempt. He came out of the gates on fire. 7th-round pick from 2023, who had a great year last year with Kamloops before a short stint in Grand Rapids. A guy who is surprising Red Wings fans, and I'm sure the front office with how well he's been developing into a consistent threat at the professional level. Of course, professional level is a very short stint, 10 games last year, but he's showing that was no flash in the pan as early as these prospect games. So I'm excited for him for sure. I also want to shout out Rudy Guimond. I thought Guimond, he played 2 periods in the first game. I believe just the 2 periods. He was great. I thought he had his angles very sharp. He was tracking the puck very well, not having to make a ton of saves as the Red Wings dominated game one pretty much from start to finish, but he made several good saves when he was asked upon. And, I haven't seen a lot of Guimond. He was a 6th-round pick in 2023 for the Red Wings, played with the Moncton Wildcats last year of the QMJHL, and will again this season, but last year had a .940 save percentage with them. So I know that's the first time I've ever seen Guimond, I think, in action, and I was really impressed.
Yeah, same. I think he was pretty comfortably the most impressive goalie of the weekend. Yeah, I mean, that's one where it's really hard to judge in that small of a sample size. Like you take into account
he had a good outing.
Competition. You take into account the fact that he, it's part of one game. You take into account Like you said, didn't face a ton of shots. Like there's a lot of, nuance and factors when it comes to really all of these guys, but certainly goalies even more so really than anybody else. But yeah, with what he was faced with, I thought he handled it really well. And I think the hope with him is that you just create a little bit more depth in the future, goaltending room of this organization. So I guess it's not one room, but the future goaltending depth as a whole with the Wings right now, that they're kind of obviously you get Gibson and that hopefully will help. But as far as the future of net, you're kind of putting all of your cookies in two jars. And so it'd be nice to have, even if it's not just we need another guy that's, projects to be a starting goalie in the NHL, just to have some sort of organizational depth at that position past, one or two names, I think would go a long way.
That's why the Red Wings draft a goalie every single year. This year it was Michael Prattle. Prattle, sorry. Every single year they draft a new guy. They took Prattle in the third round. He played in this game today. It was all right. I wasn't too overly impressed, but again, super short sample size, and Dallas played a lot better of a game in this second game, so Prattle was tested a lot more than Guimond was too. I'm trying to think who else. Doucette scored a goal. Red Wings power play was phenomenal. It's great to see that trickles down even into the prospects. I think they scored, at least 5 power play goals. They scored, I know, at least 2 in the first game. I think it was 3 consecutive to take the lead in the second game as well. Their power play was just clicking, and I think a lot of that has to do with, again, MBN, Amadeus Lombardi, Danielson, ASP, Shai Buyam. When you go to a power play, you get the opportunity of putting those best players who dominate at 5-on-5 exclusively out there for 2 minutes. So it's obviously you have 2 lines, but that too, it didn't surprise me that when the power play unit got out there, all of a sudden they were scoring a bunch of goals because they were filled with first-round picks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
I'm trying to think here. Carson Bantle got himself a goal. Betcher got himself a goal. Another player, Becker. It's a Becker, not Betcher. Another player whose name I heard in my ear, Becker. Am I missing anyone? Kilfoyle, one of the invitees.
Yeah.
Kilfoyle. No, wait.
What?
Yeah, he was an invitee. For some, I had that thought in the back of my head. I was like, wait, is he a late round draft pick this year? No, he was one of the invitees. Scored a goal. That was nice. It was actually a filthy goal. I don't want to just brush past that. Hold on. He made a sick move around the defender and then roofed it backhand.
Yeah.
It was a filthy goal. The second goal, I think that gave the Griffins the lead. The Wings prospects the lead in the second game before they blew it. Well, not this guy, unfortunately. He's too young still. He'll have to go back into the draft. But I think that about does it. It was.
We talked Doucette, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned he scored a goal from.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I truly. I mean, I think that this was a nice showing. You saw some excitement for sure. You saw some
a lot of scoring.
Right, you saw a lot of scoring. You saw reasons to be excited about some specific players, and I think you, again, we're leaving the weekend with what we wanted to see, which is Danielson being clearly too good to be there.
And Lombardi.
Right. And then once we learned Lombardi was going to be there, that obviously he gets grouped into that too. And then you saw the flashes of what, people are excited about with other guys like ASP and MBN and stuff. So yeah, I mean, everyone stayed healthy. That's obviously a huge win as well. I think this was a pretty darn successful weekend, all things considered.
And I think it was a successful episode, too, for our first recap of the year.
Okay, dude.
Pat ourselves.
Maybe the cheesiest thing you've ever said, but yeah.
That was the cheesiest thing I've ever said?
I said cheesiest, not worst. You have said some absolutely just horrible dad jokes on here.
Let's go through the top 5.
No, let's not. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Appreciate you all for tuning in. We ball. And yeah.
Yep, same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.